much, and we're going to get started. Welcome to the first inaugural RISE Clinic Symposium, Criminal Justice Reform, Protecting, Enforcing, and Advancing the Rights of Victims. My name is Professor Stephanie Richard, and this is the first year of the RISE Clinic, which is a first of its kind law school clinic training law students in how to represent in criminal proceedings victims of violent crime, so that survivors of violence have a greater voice in our criminal justice system. Today, I'm so happy to welcome our esteemed panelists, 22 of them to be exact, who will have a dialogue with us in community, whether from a survivor or lived experience of our criminal justice system, or whether from allied professional experience as a judge, a prosecutor, or defense counsel. We hope that this conversation and dialogue is rich and that will be the beginning of a more expansive discussion on victims' rights with survivor input in Los Angeles County. As the program indicates, this is really a starting place and a dialogue. So the structure of the panel is a little unique in that we have our survivor leaders and our allied professionals who are there to listen to each other's presentations and then ask questions of each other based on their own practical experience and perspective. You as audience members are also invited to ask questions in written form. We're not certain that we'll have time to answer and respond to your questions, but know that what your questions will do, and which is why we really ask you to write as many as you can, is help us shape the next forum that we'll be hosting on victims' rights in October. And in that way, the dialogue that we're having with you as service providers and community members will shape our planning for our next forum, which will be much more practical and working group focused as opposed to this dialogue as a starting place. So without further ado, we are going to start with our first panel, which is Survivors Shifting the Conversation on Victims' Rights. I requested that all our panelists name the panels. So this was the name that our survivor leaders chose. And every panel was asked to present for 8 minutes on what they would like to see change in the criminal justice system. And our prosecutors wanted that question a little bit modified to say, what would you like to see changed or improved in the criminal justice system? So that is the question that we're asking all of our panelists. And so Wendy, please begin. Oh, and I forgot to say, we're not going to list everyone's bios because they're all online. Everyone participating in this event is an expert and esteemed in their field. We hope you go and look at the breadth of their expertise, but we want to use the time for their really concrete solutions and examples of problems that they've seen with the system. So now let me turn it over to Ms. Barnes.
Thank you. Okay, so first of all, I would just like to take a moment to say thank you to each and every one of you for being here today and being willing to listen to the wisdom of survivors of human trafficking. So to give a brief background about my situation, I was trafficked for over a decade by what we would call a boyfriend pimp. The trafficking ring contained anywhere between 4 to 10 girls at any given time. And over that time, I had 3 children with my trafficker. So our trafficker had many different techniques to control us and keep us trapped in that world. One of those techniques was either through threat, through force, through coercion, making us be a part of that trafficking ring. So some had to recruit, some had to train, some had to drive or collect money. So I want to share one situation with you just so that you can see it through the eyes of the victim. There was a time that our trafficker, he had been grooming a girl for about 6 months. I didn't understand that word then. I didn't have words to, explain what that was. But this girl came to me one day and she was crying, bawling her head off. And she said, "Wendy, he's making me go out tonight. I have to go work the street and pull my weight." I felt her pain. I could empathize with the anxiety that she felt. And from a place of compassion and love, I told her, "I can hook you up with one of my regulars, and you can do it here in the apartment, which is in my name." I did not see her as a 14-year-old girl. I did not see myself as a 25-year-old adult. I saw us as two individuals who were trapped in a horrible situation. So from that, I was guilty of promoting prostitution. I received 2 years in prison, 4 years of post-prison supervision, and a lifetime label of sex offender. From that point, my criminal record and that label determined where I could live, where I could work, and it was a dark cloud that stayed over me all the time. Now, thankfully, after 20 years, my record has been finally cleared through lots of pain and tears and a lot of hard work. But for the main reason that we're here today, what needs to change? Just to explain, while I was in the life, the only encounters that we typically had with the outside world was either with healthcare professionals, public defenders, judges, and police officers. If during those encounters I had been provided with information about how to get out, what resources were available to me, or if somebody had provided me with what a path looked like. Understand that when you offer somebody, "Do you want help? Do you want to get out of this situation?" What you're actually asking them to do is, "Okay, step off this cliff into the complete blackness void." I needed to know what help looked like. I needed to know I needed a vision for what success was. But honestly, my passion is for prevention. Before I was trafficked, I was vulnerable. It was through my adverse childhood experiences, the ACEs. Mine were severe bullying in grade school, parental absence, and it wasn't that my parents were gone, my mom, she was a single mom and she had to work 2 jobs to keep a roof over our head. Third was poverty, and the fourth was child sexual abuse. So you take all 4 of those factors and it left me feeling very lost, alone, unloved, and a perfect target for a trafficker when I was 15 years old. I think we really need to funnel so much more into prevention and intervening. I remember when I first went to court and talking to my public defender, I told her everything. And I told her, I can't testify against him. He has too much on me. This is what, I told her the truth about everything. And instead of her providing me with maybe social services or a therapist to talk to, respectfully, she says, "I will do my best to get you as least time as I can." So I think I have 1 minute left. Yep. I think what I really want you to know today, what I've learned through my experience, is that when a person has a soul wound. Those wounds that happen at such a young age. And when children are not taught, or they don't never learn how to love themselves or see themselves as worthy, they're not able to heal those soul wounds. It is through others. It has been through acts of kindness and acts of service over the past 20 years that have shown me that I am worthy, that I am worth being loved. And it is through that my soul wound is finally healing. When anybody comes into your courtrooms, first look to see if that crime they committed, did it come from a place of desperation? If we stop, if we prevent people from being in a place of desperation, our world will be a better place. So again, thank you so much for being here today.
Miss Molina?
Wow. Such an impactful presentation. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story. And I was a desperate mother of 3 wonderful children. I was in my hometown in Puebla, Mexico, and I was taking sewing classes, and someone contacted my sewing teacher, offering her a job in the United States, and they were looking for female who knew how to sew. I was a desperate mother because I didn't have money to save my baby's life. She passed away. I didn't have money to take her to a better hospital and then with her life. This experience changed my life forever. When the opportunity came to go to the United States, I thought, yeah, I can go to the United States, because people who come from Mexico and go back, they never say how difficult it is to get the first job, or how difficult it is to learn the new language, or to know the money. Everything is so different. So in my dreams, I thought, I'm going to the United States for 6 months, I'm going to save $5,000, go back and start my own business. I was escaping domestic violence and all kind of abuses, because even though I live with the father of my kids, he didn't support me. And I thought, with this opportunity going to the United States, I can, start something in my home village. So they brought me to the United States with false promises, and I ended up in a sweatshop. I didn't have the opportunity to speak to my coworkers. I didn't have freedom to go outside. I didn't know where I was. I hadn't ever been in the United States. I didn't know how to speak English. I didn't know anybody. I didn't have money. My trafficker was a US citizen, and she said, if I go out and I speak to anybody, they will call the police, they will put me in jail, and I will never see my children again. So I was so terrified of the police, and even in my mind, I would think how they will know I just arrived to the United States. But, she's been her whole life in the United States. She knows the system. She knows the US. I don't know. I didn't even know where I was. So I was locked up in the factory. I wasn't allowed to go out. There were no showers. There were no place a person that I could talk, only my coworkers. But I was forbidden to speak to them. If I speak to them, or if I do anything to anger my trafficker, she will punish me, and she always threatened me to harm my children back home, my mother or my siblings. This went on for 40 days. And then one day, I asked her to let me go to a church. She didn't let me go at first, but then I was so insistent. Finally, she got tired and let me go. I escaped, and then a few days after I escaped, I found out that FBI were looking for me. I had escaped to San Diego. They went to San Diego. They brought me to the Los Angeles, and they told me that they were already investigating the case because someone had called an organization, CHIRLA, and CHIRLA had tipped immigration services. But the good thing about participation of CHIRLA was that they wanted the rights of the workers to be respected. But the good thing about the FBI, they were investigating the case. But since my case was early in 2002, there was not much knowledge about human trafficking. It was a new topic, even for the US. So my trafficker got a light sentence, and then all this time she was looking for me. But dealing with the system, one important thing, I could tell they were good people, but they didn't treat me as a victim or as a survivor. They treated me as a criminal because they didn't believe me and they hadn't seen these kind of issues in the US, or they haven't prosecuted, these kind of crimes. So therefore, they would take me to courts like 40 times, and I was surrounded by prosecutors, investigators, police, FBI. All of them spoke in English. I didn't know one word in English. I didn't know if they were believing me or not. They never asked me if I had a place where to live. They never asked me if I had food to eat. I was new to this country and I had escaped human trafficking, but obviously they didn't know I was a human trafficking victim and I had escaped. And the most important thing in my experience, they didn't believe me, because I think if they had believed me, they would have investigated my trafficker instead of bringing me so many times to the courtroom. And I felt literally like a little mouse between huge cats, because all of them look at me, but I didn't know what they were talking about. I didn't know if they believed me or not. And of course, they had translators, but it's not the same when they speak or you understand what they are saying. They can translate some, but a lot of it was lost in the translation. So coming from me, I would say, when a person comes to your courtroom, treat them, or at least assure them that you believe them, and you are there to investigate their case. And even though you cannot say, oh, you are innocent or guilty, but at least treat them as a human being and a person who have experienced some kind of situation and needs to be heard, and show them some kind of credibility. Thank you.
Ms. Mays?
Okay, hello everybody. How are you all doing? To share a little bit about what I would like to see, I would like to see the same way sex offenders and arsonists have to be registered. I would like to see the same things for people that commit domestic violence. This will definitely impact saving lives. Because if I would have known that my abuser had already been prosecuted 4 times for domestic violence, I probably would have made a different decision if there was maybe more of a platform to where you can also find that information, which it really wasn't. So for me, I had moved to California from the state of Indiana, and I out here with 3 small girls by myself, no family. Met this guy, and the abuse started probably like 90 days after being with him, because we know there's always that cycle of violence, that whole honeymoon phase thing happening. And then once he was comfortable, he became first emotionally abusive, then along with the verbal abuse, and then came the physical. Well, and for whatever reason, I continued because I was so broken and broke down, feeling like I didn't have worth. Of course, I would return back to him. He was a narcissist. And so basically, finally, when he almost took my life, he was prosecuted, but the part that really hurt me, he only received 4 years for being a reoffender of five or six times. 4 years, only did 2, and probation. And his probation sentence, I think, was supposed to be 2 years. I think he only did maybe a year. And so the judge, however it works, prosecutor, defender, I felt like the judge really worked in my favor because he stated we normally only give 5-year restraining orders. But in this case, I'm going to give 10 because this guy is violent. He's dangerous. Okay, so long story short, when he got out of prison, it didn't stop him from bothering me. He was able to locate me and harass me. Did I reach out to law enforcement? No, because they've already failed me. So what's going to happen? What's the point? So then I had to take it pretty much into my own hands of continuing to move, which I worked in the field. And so I'm experiencing this while working with survivors going through this. And this was, to me, I felt like I was a hypocrite. Because you, of all people, you should know better. Well, it's not that easy. It's just not. I'm sorry. But to kind of wrap this up, it took me to move to Los Angeles. And I've only been here a year for him to leave me alone. Because it was going to be one or two things. It was going to be he was going to find me and hurt me, or I was going to hurt him and then end up in prison having to defend myself for being the victim, which we all know how that plays out as well. So now guess where he's at? He's back in jail right now for victimizing someone else. And I'm actually here on her behalf because she had no way of really knowing about this guy. And when he was bothering me, I had to kind of like try to keep tabs on where he's at and what he was doing. So I'm thinking, well, maybe if he finds somebody else, he will finally leave me alone. It didn't work because even when he was with her, he was still trying to reach me. And when I finally contacted her and said, I don't know, I hear this person is back in jail. I don't know if you was his victim or not. Were you? And she said, yes. I said, well, I just want you to know I was his victim too. That was the only way she knew anything. And she said, I don't know what it is. I'm so glad you reached out to me. She said, because I was just on my way down to the jail to visit him, to let him know how much I forgive him. I'm like, girl, don't do it. That is the devil. You stay away and he almost killed her. So now he's been sitting in jail to this day for going on a year, and still the back and forth with the prosecutor and the public defender, and he's just sitting there just knowing, oh, I'll only get 3 or 4 years. I'll be back out. So my ask is to make these people register as offenders, because it's not just up to providers to save lives, it's everybody's responsibility. So that's all I have to say.
Mr. Lopez?
Hi everyone. Thank you for being here today, taking the opportunity on your daily time and listen about human trafficking and learn more about what it is and get some solutions. My name is Jimmy. I was born in Honduras. I left my country at the age of 12 years all escaping from recruiting gang. They were recruiting young people, the violence of my country, and all that. And I didn't know where to go. I was just escaping, and I was threatened that if I don't join them, I was going to get killed, and my family too. We just started running out of my hometown village, and I left my country. I had to cross borders. I had to look for where everybody was saying at the moment, let's go to the United States, there's opportunities over there where you can succeed in life. And throughout my journey, I crossed different countries. I ended up in Mexico, and I stayed there for 2 years. Over there, I met a guy that he offered me many things. I was gonna get help. I was make money and support my family back home, and I didn't know where they were because I didn't have any contact with anybody of my family members and siblings. And I met this guy, and he offered me that he was going to bring me here to the U.S. To work and get better opportunities and make money. And I decided to say yes because he looked like an amazing person, like a normal person, like just like us. And then I believed this guy. He took me to his house. He treated me nicely, and I didn't know what his intention was. And then the next day, he brought me here to the U.S., to Los Angeles, and he got in contact with some of his friends, and they found me a job in a furniture factory. And then this guy took me over there, and I didn't know English at all, any word, and I didn't understand what these people were saying because they were talking in English, and like Flor saying, this guy was a U.S. citizen, and but this guy has contacts in other countries, Mexico, and I don't know where else too. And then I started working in the furniture factory. And the first thing that this guy did, he took me to his office. He talked to me privately, and he told me that I was going to work there, not trying to talk to anybody, the rest of the workers, not trying to do anything, because if I do something, he was going to do something against me. And I was just listening to him and thinking that he was actually a nice person, the owner of the factory. And then while I was working there, the days start passing by and it started getting harder and harder. The work they used to provide me every day, and I used to finish it. I was the one who do everything there. I learned how to operate all the electric machines. And after a week I was there, this guy brought me to the office again. He told me that I was not able to talk to anybody. I was not able to go outside. I was not able to try to do something or escape. If I do, this guy is gonna chase me and follow me and kill me and also kill my family. And during all these years, I was not in contact with my family member. I was just scared. I didn't have any family here at all, and I was just scared and not having any voice at all, not talking to anybody, because if I tried to talk to all these people they were told that way. They were actually knew that if I talked to all these people, they were going to tell the owner, and he was going to punish me. And then I stayed there all this time for 2 years working without not talking to anybody, not be able to even go buy food outside. And then one time I was tired because I used to work from 5 in the morning to 7 at night. I used to stay and sleep at the factory without having able to go out at least and see the sun. And then I was like basically like in jail. And then I was there after it was about to turn 2 years when I got tired of doing this and not getting paid at all, not even receiving $1 for 2 years. And then one time I was sick, and I told the guy, I'm sick. It's impossible for me to operate this machine. I'm sick. And I was at that time I was 14 years old, and I started operating this machine, And I saw other guys that were working there, young children, and I believe that these guys used to bring them from Mexico or from other country and keep them the same way I was there. And then that time I got sick, the guy told me that I was not able to go anywhere, and then he was not going to do anything about my sickness. And then during all this time since I left my country, I didn't see any doctor, nothing at all. And I was sick, and then he hit me because I didn't go back to do my duties. And he hit me twice again. It was the third time that he hit me, and then I ran out. I ran out of the building, and then I ended up in a restaurant asking for help. I was running like a crazy guy on the street, and then I asked for help to these people in the restaurant. And then all I said, I need help, because this guy's hurting me, and I had nothing to do. I can't do anything to avoid all these issues. And then he helped me, he offered me help, and I stayed in the restaurant. He offered me a job. I started washing dishes. I learned how to cook, and I learned all these things, right? During the 1 year passed, and he offered me a different job. It's like, you want to make more money, and I can help you with that. And I was like, sure. I mean, I can help my family. And with all this little money I was making, I was able to help my family because one of my friends, I can call him in Mexico, he helped me to contact my family members in Honduras, actually in the border with Guatemala, so they were escaping from the situation I was living. And then I was arrested because this guy told me to drive this truck back and forth to different places, and I ended up in jail. And I was treated as a criminal and not as a victim because being illegally, and they found cocaine on the truck, and I didn't know. I didn't know that this truck had drugs in there, and then I was driving back and forth this truck to different places, and I didn't know what was in there, and I got arrested. I ended up in jail, and I didn't know, I didn't understand what they were saying. I stayed there. I intended to kill myself because I wasn't hurt. Nobody would listen to me. Nobody built a relationship with me to talk to me like a friend conversation. They were saying that I was criminal. I came here illegally to sell drugs and all that. And then the judge told me that I had 3 sentences. And then that's why I tried to kill myself, because I didn't have no help from anybody, and nobody who can help me or speak or, to build a relationship so I can explain what was the situation. And nobody can help me, only the attorney that they appoint me. That guy helped me. He built a relationship because I didn't want to talk, and this guy called Cass. And Cass went and rescued me while I was in jail. And that's when I stand up and I dedicate some of my time to advocate and talk about human trafficking, because before it was only sex trafficking that was people known by sex trafficking, but now there's labor trafficking, and men can be trafficked, and there's an example that's me there. And one more little thing. After the situation, I couldn't find, for me to succeed in life, be able to go to school, to find a job, I was not able to go to school because of my background that was bad. So every time I applied for a job or something that I wanted to do in my life, it was hard. I was not able to actually get that job because of my background. And then that's something that it should be worked on, to learn how to treat the victim and identify as a short period of time, because it took 2 years for them to identify me as a victim. And I'm here because of this guy. He's my angel. And that's it. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Jess. Thanks for being here. It's interesting because I've been doing this work for a really long time. I've done advocacy work for almost 10 years. But I feel like really nervous today to talk about the things that I'm going to talk about because it's not something I ordinarily share in public. But I feel like not alone on this panel in terms of like not being the only person who was essentially like failed by law enforcement and experienced police violence. So the goal for me is really to end police violence and to ensure accountability and repair where it happens. I wrote some things because I felt like I wanted to make the best use of my minutes. And yeah, kind of streamline my thoughts and sort of some of the things I think might be worth thinking about in terms of solutions. I think that when we think about police violence or like police brutality, usually like we're flooded by the news of black men, right? And I think that that is incredibly valid, but it kind of calls attention to the erasure of like black women. You know, we have like maybe two names that come to mind, like Taylor or Sunderland, but then there's like so many others. We don't talk about transgender folks, we don't talk about queer folks, who like all die at the hands of the state, and they're also like beaten and raped by police. And those stories are never used as like a catalyst for a movement, even though they're like rampant. And I like to base things in history because it just, you know, it's really easy to say like, oh, you experienced like police sexual violence and that's like an anomaly, right? Like that's like anecdotal, that's just like you. But it's not because, like if you think about like Brandon Hamer, for example, because I'm someone who's like really rooted in social justice work, they shared in the 60s like their story of police violence like with the DNC. And that was their address to the DNC, was their story of like sexual assault by a police officer. There's a whole like subsection to the Me Too movement called Me Too Behind Bars. So we really have to think about this in terms of like it being a systemic problem and not being something that like someone, like an individual has gone through a couple times. And there's like endless recounts of books and documentaries and articles. I mean, when I was like thinking about like Principal or something, I was just like, I don't even know what to say to this because it's so rampant. But I mean, personally, when I was being trafficked from the ages of 14 to 17, I had 6 buyers or clients, or whatever you want to call them, who were police officers. I had 2 folks, 2 police officers coerce me into sex or rape me, and who also, one of whom robbed me. I was sexually assaulted by 3 corrections officers while in detention, and have experienced like countless experience of police sexual harassment since like a very, very young age. Just like I'm reminded of like being like catcalled in a subway, like, you know, when you're like 12 years old. And I think that this occurred because I was just, you know, I was a child, but I was seen as sexually available and unworthy of protection. So I kind of want to like, I'm also thinking back to like the reasons like why some of the stuff was normalized to me, and it had to do a lot with like, you know, having experience, adverse childhood experience, like Wendy was talking about, but specifically being like sexually abused for a very long time in early childhood. But this police violence was like really normalized to me because my mom and I moved into my uncle's house to avoid homelessness when I was about 11 years old, and like my cousin, who was an NYPD officer, he raped me for 3 years, and all of this happened and was like perpetuated by the presence of, like, or the threat of, I should say, like a shield, right, and a gun. So I just think it's like as we fight for like more consistent accountability, we need to like really be understanding like what this looks like and how so much harm is occurring in this way, and like when people ask for like with reform, I think like what they're actually asking for is like oppressive systems to be like dismantled and to invest in institutions and resources and services that help communities like grow and thrive. So I think that the more that we call attention to this this new way of thinking, essentially, that we're going to be able to demand, like, for example, that like local officials like stop allocating like funding to police and instead like start moving money towards community like violence prevention programs. I think that like funneling so many resources into law enforcement instead of like education or affordable housing or access to healthcare has caused like really intense harms to our communities. And you know, one of the statistics I found was that like the leading cause of death for Black men in a recent study was like 1 in 1,000 Black men can expect to be killed by police. And like public health experts like talk about how this is a serious public health issue. So I don't know. I just think that while we're thinking about like solutions to these issues, we can think about what harm reduction looks like, and I think that could look like ending enforcement of like minor offenses, and like ending the presence of police in schools, because we all know how like that really funnels people into prison, or children, I should say, and just like ending situations that like will stop, you know, people from, or police officers from like engaging in racial profiling. So anyway, it's really easy to say like, oh, the criminal legal system has this, like that survivors can come forward and that they'll be properly investigated and that officers will be, you know, prosecuted, and that that's how the problem is going to be handled. But it's important to know that most people don't come forward, and most officers are not prosecuted, and those who are often have like don't face misconduct, or don't have like official charges on misconduct, and they are usually acquitted because survivors are not believed. So that moving forward, I think that we need to, like, I'm reiterating what every single person on this panel said, is like really listen to survivors and believe them, to really think about how we're like deeply invested in police as a solution to violence. It's actually is a solution to everything, like mental health goes into police, and poverty and homelessness goes to police, and we have this like one-size-fits-all solution for every social problem that we have. And it doesn't even, I think those solutions don't call into account that like the only like second to excessive force, police sexual assault is like the second thing that police officers are constantly like accused of. And I think it's really uncomfortable to think about this stuff because we think that the police are like the folks who are supposed to be helping us out and the folks who are supposed to be like doing work to like stop violence as opposed to perpetuating it. But I think it's important to really at least like have a program or a model or a policy that starts conditioning funding to police departments, and saying something like at least like, you know, don't sexually harass or assault members of the public, because that, or at least put, you know, prevention or detection or hold officers accountable like when they are caught of doing this. So anyway, thank you. I want to make sure I go over, but I appreciate everyone like holding this stuff because it's really intense, and it's also, like I said, not something I necessarily talk about often. So I can also feel like the ways like that like trauma is still held in my body because it's something that I have to like constantly be in relationship to. So just wanting to mention that, wanting to say thank you and being appreciative of people holding space for this conversation. Even though it's like a intense one to have, but also wanting to encourage people to just think about this issue. It's really easy to dismiss it. It's really easy to erase it. It's really easy to say like, again, like that this is something that doesn't really happen much, but I think if we look back in history and we listen to survivors, especially survivors of human trafficking, we are able to kind of distinguish if this is like something that is worth our time and it's not an inconvenience to talk about.
Judge Sullivan and Ms. Crenshaw, now is your time to comment on the comments of our speakers or ask questions. Judge Sullivan.
My spot?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. First of all, thank you. I feel really privileged to be here and to be able to kind of witness the truth, that I'm hearing, and I appreciate that a lot. I heard a lot of resilience and a lot of tenacity. What I wanted to ask the panelists, however, was your first contact with, the system, if you will, whether that was law enforcement or a judge or an attorney. What would you like to have seen happen? Was there a space there? And if so, what would help to provide access at that point to that you, that isn't you now, but that was you then when you first had contact? Because I think that the problem was really well described, but the solutions are really kind of difficult to see. I don't know who wants to answer that question.
You looked at me, so I guess that would be me. Actually, my encounter with law enforcement was, I felt like in that moment they saved my life. They heard me, they believed me, and they connected me the way I was supposed to be connected. So that the very first encounter was good, but it was the court system, the prosecuting and public defending and all that. That's where the problem came in for me.
Yeah.
For me, my first encounter with them was with the FBI, and they brought me to Los Angeles, to Immigration Services. I can tell all the officers were nice, but answering your question, what could have made the difference for me, it was if they would have seen the person who I was, that I didn't have a place to live, I didn't have food, or the means to get food. I didn't have money. And they care about their case, but they didn't care about the person who was me. They were building their case, and they said it was a strong case and new to them, but they didn't care about the person who was me. They didn't ask me, do you have a place to live? They just let me go. If it wasn't for the person of this organization who helped me, I would have ended up being a homeless in the street. So that would have made a difference in my life if they would have provided me a shelter or food, something, like food stamps or something. But they didn't. So they forgot the person that was me.
One more or something? Or no?
If I'm capturing the question correctly, I think that I can just add that, it's important to remember that a lot of our communities are not even if this is the first time being in a space with the system, in maybe ways that you feel, I guess I would say that if when you come into this space, if you're treated like a victim, that can really support your process through whatever it is you're looking at, whether it be trial or prosecuting somebody or whatever it is, or needing legal support, like family law or whatever. People need to remember or feel like they are humanized, and that their experiences are valid, and that they're like understood in ways that that help them move forward with their lives. So I think that definitely creating like spaces that help people feel like the things that they're asking of the system. Like, I think that people don't have necessarily like a great understanding of like what folks are there to help them with, right? And if they're there to help them with like prosecution and that's not necessarily something that they want, it can feel like damaging the experience. If that's something that they do want, then how do we go about that with like intentionality and like, you know, understanding trauma and understanding like what their sort of asks and needs are. So when, you know, like Flor was talking about, like, nobody asked me if I had, like, food. Like, we shouldn't be in a situation where, like, it's kind of, like, transactional. Like, what's happening here is, like, going to be a benefit to me in the system, but not necessarily to that person, to that human being. How are we, like, feeding back into, like, what that person needs, what their needs are, what they're lacking, what they, like, fail to understand, what can really, like help them essentially, help them, right? Help them move forward with their lives, help them, you know, be able to access something that will help. I think that's what people want is help, right? And so what does that help look like? And who is it for? I think that's what's important to think about.
Ms. Jackson, do you have a comment or a question based on what you've heard today?
Part of both. Thank you to all the survivors, particularly Wendy and Jenny's story rings so true because I've heard it so much as a public defender, where victims are often criminalized, they're treated as criminals, and no one takes the time to hear why they're there, what brought them to that place. What kind of services to all the survivors, but particularly Wendy and Jenny, would have been a benefit to you when you came in? I know I briefly spoke to Jenny, and he told me that it was a public defender who, after several years, recognized that he had been a victim of trafficking, and that actually connected him with the resources. Could you give us some idea of what other resources, or what would you have liked to have seen when you came into the criminal system? I won't say the criminal justice system, because it's not always justice in the system. It's flawed. It's very flawed, but we can fix it. So please tell me.
Well, kind of just quickly to go back to the last question, I think, what if our intention was to restore that person to what they were prior to them being victimized? And that's going to be different for every single person. I was actually very, very lucky in my situation. There were a lot of programs available to me. Sadly, all of those programs are now closed down because of funding cuts. But those programs really did help me understand my responsibilities, trying to learn how to live in a world that I hadn't been a part of for over a decade. I think the most powerful things that helped me were the individuals. I remember my very first PO, my very first parole officer, he saw me for who I was. And he took the time to say, Wendy, if ever you get overwhelmed, if anything's ever too much for me, call me. And when I found myself in a situation that it was just class, it was just college classes, and I was bawling my head off, and I called him, and he was like, come in and see me right now. And so literally, it is the power of caring, the power of showing how much you care through your actions. It has been individuals who have shown me how much they cared about me through their actions that have planted the seeds for my life, and it is through those that I am whole again. Well, for him to hold. Yeah. So that's a gift. But so Jimmy.
Well, in my case, it was rough because I wish I had knowledge about human trafficking, about that if you leave your border of your country, you're gonna confront a lot of situations like this situation, like human trafficking. I would have known, I wish I had known human trafficking, or by knowing the language, that, I can read signs, the red flags that, that this person is showing some type of, something that, that does something bad to other people. So I wish I have known that, and also, when I was in court inside in the detention center, I didn't know the language. I was shy. I was embarrassed. I didn't want to attack anybody. I didn't have no help from anybody. And this person who helped me, the court, when they appoint you, the attorney, to somebody, this person actually tried so many times to talk to me and build a relationship, but I didn't trust this person because everything, since the very beginning, I was treated very bad since the arresting time. And they talked to me, but they didn't believe me. They were not investigating where I was coming from, where my family member was, being a young child, with not knowing the language where this guy is coming from, what the situation is. This guy tried a couple of times, but I was traumatized by the situation I lived throughout all my journeys since I left my country. And I didn't want to talk. All I did was, tend to kill myself inside the detention center. And then that's when this guy came, and then he talked to me. He offered me a cup of water. He told me, let's go to my office. I need to talk to you. I want to, practice some fun time. I was like, okay. And I just kept quiet. I didn't want to talk at all. And this guy started making some jokes, and he offered me a cup of coffee, and he brought me a sandwich, and started talking to me. And he's like, please, talk to me. Tell me about your situation. What's going on with you? What's happening? Why you ended up here? And he started building some relationship with me. And I started crying. I don't know, I started crying so bad. And then he stood out and he came up to me and gave me a hug. He was hugging me for a long period of time, and he told me, it's fine, you're gonna be okay, no worries. And then I finally trust this guy because, I wasn't scared by everyone. And even this guy, when he gave me the hug, I wasn't scared. And then I stopped crying. I started telling him everything what's going on in my life. And then he told me, no worries, I'm here to help you. I'm not gonna harm you. I'm not gonna hurt you. I'm not with the judge. That's what he literally told me. I'm going to help you to get out of here and continue with your normal life. But it wasn't normal because after the case, after I got out from the detention center, they put me on probation for 3 years, house arrest, and I was not even able to go anywhere. I have a long period of, a distance where I can go and not go. And then that's something that was stopping me from doing my best, investing my time in school, doing what I wanted to do in my life. And that's when this guy called Cass, and they set up an appointment with an attorney, and the Cass attorney went and rescued me from the detention center. And that's how I believe that there is a solution, and there is actually a power of every human to help each other. We are human beings. It doesn't matter the color you are, the religion, where you come from, where you practice. We are, human beings. We're here for a period of time, and we're gone. Why we have to, harm each other instead of helping, building a nice community, helping the children that they don't have school, that they don't have houses, they don't have food, like I was one time. I was struggling with food. when during all this period of time. I got sick many times. I never went to see the doctor because of the lack of being with this monster. I can say that because he hurt me, he hit me many times, and actually he threatened me to kill me with an arm, fighting arm. And because of this angel, he built a relationship. He actually told me that he promised me that I was gonna be fine, and because of him, I'm here.
So I feel like there's a weight of wisdom in the room now. So thank you to all our panelists for sharing and really starting the dialogue, which I hope will continue to be survivor-led and survivor-focused. So we'll take just like a 3-minute recess because we're running a little bit behind. So if you're on the next panel, please come up. If you're an audience member, please also take time to write any questions that this panel spurred for you. And we have a student volunteer, please raise your hand, who will come and pick up your questions. So, yeah, so please take time. And then also don't forget about our drinks, coffee, lemonade, etc. outside.